Hola, and welcome back to another session of character modeling with me, S'more, aka Steve Moore. This session is going to be a bit of fun, man. We're going to get into making some real time here. We're going to begin the process using XGen. But before we do that, I got a special announcement for you guys. So sometime back, a while back, I had promised that I would make available for download the various files, the various models and files that I created for this project, specifically the ZBrush high-res sculpt, Marvelous Designer costume, etc. And that is now, I am pleased to say, available up on Gumroad for a small fee. If you want to help support the channel and get a little something out of it, you get to kind of scrutinize, my substance painter scene and how did I put the materials together in Marmoset, and you get to mess around with the high-res ZBrush sculpt. Maybe you want to make a 3D print from it. Who knows? But it's all up there and it's available for download right now. I will provide a link in the description below. And with that, let's get into making some hair. All right, so here we are in Maya, and we're going this episode to take a look at getting some hair cards out of XGen. So what we're looking at right now is kind of my guide here. So I sculpted this. My intention was twofold. One was ultimately I wanted to print the model out, so I wanted something that I could actually print. So I made this very stylized looking here, but it serves a dual purpose because I think with XGen you got enough to deal with just kind of creating the hair itself. It helps to have a guide. So having a rough hairdo like this, I found very useful. Now, to create the hair, XGen generates its hair from it needs a surface to generate the hair from. So I've gone ahead and created these polygonal hair shells, and you'll notice I've kind of got two groups here. So the idea is that we want to try and mimic reality. So here, we want to build the hair up in layers. And we kind of want to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. So later on, I'll subdivide this into further little groups. But for now, for this episode, we're just going to focus on the short here. So yeah, she's kind of got a pretty funky, challenging hairdo. You've got these long hair bangs and spiky kind of punk looking stuff on top. And then down the back here, this is supposed to be kind of shorter here. So I thought that'd be a great place to start and look at turning that into actually polygonal cards that we can get into an engine. So we'll hide this bit here. So we're just going to focus on this area here, and we're going to use this to generate our cards. Now the very first thing we're going to have to do is take a look at the project window, right? So here we go. So go to the file project window. XGen does not save all the data with the file, with your Maya file. It creates a database, and that's something you need to be aware of. So, for example, if you're working on multiple computers, you might want to set up your project on Dropbox, for example, where you can share that across multiple machines. So, new demo short. Call it short here. Can't spell short. Short here. And you set your location. I'm just going to roll with demo here and accept. Cool. So to XGen, here we go. So we click on the little button, brings up this window here, and we're going to create a new description. Now this can be a little bit intimidating, this window. It wants a specific name for a description, another specific name for a collection. But I just put my demo short here and keep it consistent. Call that the same thing for the collection name. And here comes the interesting stuff. So Splines are used for long hair, etc. We're going to use splines for her longer hair, but in this session, we're just going to focus on the short stuff. So we're going to go with the groomable splines, useful for short hair, fur, grass, etc. So we're going to go with groomable splines randomly across the surface, which is kind of like the only option, and use grooming tools, right? And we're going to click create. Sweet. So right away, you kind of see it's generated a bunch of these kind of little tube looking things here, and you can see these little what look like vertex normals, you know, like little normals there. These are what we're interested in, these little thin guys here. That's our guides, and that's what you actually are going to be styling. And the tubes here, that's our output. So that's what we're going to select at the end of the day, and convert to polygons. And the little eye icon up here, that and the one next to it is, you've got this open eye and a closed eye. The closed eye will hide the primitives, and the open eye will reveal them. So let's hide that for a minute and just focus on the guides, right? So for the guides, under grooming here, guides are what we are going to style the hair with, and they're also going to control the length and width of our hair. So to edit the guides, you go over to the grooming tab here, and we'll scrub down towards the bottom. The very first thing you'll see is under the display line there, change lines to cards. And voila, now you get something that looks a little bit more like a hair card. So the hair, our hair, we want it to be reasonably short, but kind of, shortish. So I'll kind of give it a little bit of length, and we're also going to dial up the width, to kind of mimic our hair cards. Now, I think at the end of the day, they're going to be something like about, well, they're probably going to be somewhere around 1 here. But we may find, as just to groom them initially, maybe we want a slightly narrow value like that, And the other thing that we want to do is set the density right now. So right now, let's give it a decent amount, right? So this is so we can see the overall effect, right, of grooming our guides here. Okay, so far so good. Now, I would say I want to just kind of a heads up. Once you've set the density here, don't change it mid-groom. Once you started grooming, it'll just leave the density where it is, because what it does, if you try to change the density after you've started grooming, it's going to reset everything. I'll show you what I mean here. So let's say you're in here, and you've got your we're using the orient brush here, and I'm tweaking stuff, and I go, oh, maybe I want this to be more dense. It's going to reset everything. So we'll set it at 5, and we'll leave it there, and that should be good enough. So anywho, so speaking of the orient brush, so grooming, top of the window here, we've got a few options, and I think the ones that are going to be most useful to us this session is going to be the orient, perhaps bend, smooth. These brushes are going to be pretty good for grooming short hair. So I'm going to start by dialing up my brush. I've got the orient brush, and what the orient brush is going to do is kind of orient them in the direction that I paint. So we're trying to get them to kind of lay down a little bit. So instead of sticking out perpendicular to the surface, we're going to get them to kind of lay down a little flatter there. Cool. And this is a very, very zen task. You kind of just combing your hair. It's like waking up in the morning and you got to brush your hair. So I'm just going to go around. And to the best of my knowledge, with the groomable splines here, you might be able to flip them, but yeah, I don't think you really have a mirroring option. So that's fine though, because you don't really want them. We don't want them to be symmetrical, anywho. So I'm not worried. We want nice asymmetrical here, natural looking stuff here. So yeah, so I'm going to see if I can get these to lie down a little bit more. If they get a little sunk into the hair shell, you can always use the smooth brush. Get them. That's interesting. Yeah, there you go. Smooth brush is doing the trick there. Okay, so back to orient, and let's get these guys kind of just flowing in the direction of more natural looking hair. Here we go. Takes a little bit of time, like a lot of things, but it's a good task. Just stick the radio on and brush your hair. Now I'll be honest, I am relatively new to XGen, but as I am documenting my process here, this is definitely a major part of it, and I learned a lot doing it. I was very happy to figure out how to get the cards out of XGen. You know, it's one thing to make the hair, but you know, I can't. The stuff that I mean, XGen is really good for like kind of photorealistic hair. So we're using it kind of for a hack. You know, we're using a bit of a hacky thing with it, actually, making hair cards. But you know, it works. So I've got a few bald patches developing here where the hair cards or guides are side on to the you know, they've twisted kind of so that they're side on to the scalp or the camera. And to fix this, the pose brush comes in handy because you can actually, with the pose brush, you can actually twist the guides so that they're more perpendicular to the camera. Like these ones here, if I can, you can kind of twist them a little bit. You see, if I dial the brush size down, it enables me to kind of get hold of some of the just the individual strands here. It's a little better. Okay, so far from perfect, but I think good enough for demonstration purposes. So let's move on and get some hair cards out of this. So first things, back to grooming here. So as you may recall, we dialed the width of our cards down just so that we could visualize things easier. Let's turn that back up now. And what that's going to mean for our primitives is that they are going to inherit that width, so they're going to be much wider now. We can hide the guides by turning off visibility here, and now we're just looking at the primitives, and they look a little bit weird and psychedelic. What's going on is under the primitives option down here by default, you've got tube shade on. We can turn that off, and face cameras on too. But I'll leave that on for a second and just update it. So turning off the tube shade looks a little better. But as we turn the camera, you can see all the little cards twisting and turning, trying to face the camera. Now the fun part begins. This is where we're going to actually grab our cards. And so for option 1, there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to turn off face camera, and we'll quickly update that. Okay, so now it looks a little bit ugly, but not to worry, we'll fix that in a minute. There's some bald patches like here to fix. So you can see kind of a bit of a bald patch here. I'm going to dial up the density under the primitives. No, not under this time. We're not going to change the density of the guides. Rather, we're going to change the density of the primitives, and that's going to affect the density of our final hair card. So let's do something like 10, and there you go, much better. So we got rid of our bald spot. I'll try maybe a little less ambitious here. That's a little better. So 7, not quite so many cards, does the job. All right. So let's get some hair cards going. So to do that, up here, you will find the Select Primitives tool. So we're going to activate that tool, and then you just drag a box around all your primitives. They turn green, indicating that they are selected. Voila. So now, final step, up to generate, convert XGen primitives to polygons. And so here we're going to get a couple of options. I'm only selected primitives, and combine mesh, I've turned, this is off by default. I've turned it on so we don't get a whole bunch of separate haircuts. Sometimes you may want that. So, but in this case, I'm leaving it on. And the other thing you can do is, it's by default, it's going to, actually by default, this is usually on, place UV tiles. And what that would do is it would create a page of UV tiles and randomly assign different cards to a different place on the texture, which is useful if you want to get more variety and not having to individually assign, parts of the texture, right? But since I just want one UV card for this particular short hair strand, I'm going to turn that off, and that's it. Can click convert, and voila, there we go. So now we have our hair cards, and turn on our head here. So you'll notice, like right now, they look pretty wacky. You've got cards that are inverted. It's a mess. Now, to fix that, what we're going to do is average the normals. And to do that, to begin, let's turn on our grid. I'm going to start by creating a sphere. All right. We'll go to a nice side view. There's our sphere. Drag it up so it's going to encompass our new hair cards, right? So we're going to scale it out, turn on wireframe so I can kind of see it, and just kind of imagine the volume of the hair, right? So that's, yeah, there we go. So what we're about to do is take this sphere here with its nice smooth normals and transfer those normals to our ugly hair card normals here. So this is fun. Check this out. Okay, so we're going to take the sphere, and then I'm going to select the hair cards, and we're going to go up to Mesh, Transfer Attributes, and under Transfer Attributes, we want Vertex Normals, and we'll turn everything else off. So Vertex Normals, and based on world space, which means it's going to sample the normals of the sphere relative to the world and transfer those to our hair cards. It's going to kind of compare the sphere and the hair cards in world space and transfer their normals based on that. So we're going to hit transfer, and let's see what we get here. Voila. Now we have some nice fluffy looking little hair cards, and you'll notice that all the wacky normals have been fixed too. We no longer have kind of inverted cards. They're all facing in one consistent direction. So there you go. There's option one for making hair cards. And if we go to the layout, and let's take a look at their UVs. Okay, so every card now has this 0 to 1 UV, which is cool, and we can move that. If we make a page of hair textures, we can grab all these guys and put them on our little short hair texture. So just as an example, I've got, so here's my little test hair texture for my card. Perhaps default, there we go. So it sorts a little better. See, there's a few patches here and there, but that'll be covered up by having kind of a base, kind of a texture for the scalp. And there you go. All right, so here's what those hair cards would look like in context once we get a proper material on them in Marmoset. So So yeah, it starts to come together after you kind of layer on the longer hairs, and of course you've got kind of the head underneath the whole thing. So next session we'll take a look at making the longer hair, and we'll delve a little deeper into combing normals, how to tune the normals on the hair itself, and look at an alternate way to grab these hair cards out of XGen. But until then, thanks everyone for subscribing. I get a real kick out of watching the number of subscribers going up. I really appreciate that. So please, yeah, thank you. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, as everyone always says. And that just inspires me to try and do better. So thank you, everybody. And with that, happy modeling.